Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Middlegames series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we're taking a look at a wonderful passage of play between Stockfish and Komodo Dragon, TCEC Season 22 SuperFinal Game 84. This position arose from the Makoganov system against the King's Indian. And you can see that White's done pretty well. White's gained some nice space on the King's side, got some outposts, for example, on f6 for a knight. Got a good square on b5 for the white knight, and can consider at some stage expanding with something like b4. But it isn't completely easy to see how white is going to make the breakthrough. And in this position, Stockfish played something that was extremely unexpected to me. Now, if I stop and think back to some parallels that I've seen before, then yeah, I can understand what Stockfish is doing, but to actually make that move, even think about it during a game, pretty tough. Stockfish played the very unexpected bishop takes c5 here, and after b takes c5 played the also slightly surprising a4. Now, when I saw this plan, the first thing I thought back to was an old game of Leela's against Komodo 14. So that's not Komodo Dragon, but that's pre-NNUE Komodo from the TCEC Season 18 Division P. And in that game, in this position, Leela had played knight takes c5, takes, queen c2, bishop d7, a4. Now, what was the point of this manoeuvre? Well, the point was to fossilize the queen side and give white an absolutely entrenched square on b5 to put the knight. And this makes white's king's position on the queen side completely safe. There's nothing going to get through that if you don't want it to. And, well, whilst that wing is completely closed, well, white can expand on the king side and start creating some problems there. There's another very nice thing that this pawn on a5 gets isolated when black plays b takes c5, and that means that combination of the dark squared bishop and the queen could easily line up along this diagonal and attack the a5 pawn. Especially nasty if you get into some sort of position where all the rooks get exchanged. I know if I fast forward the game about 23 moves, you can see how this panned out. Komodo managed to get the move c6 in just to stop the knight getting into b5, but of course d takes c6 and knight b5 is always possible, just blocking that. And on the king side, well, we've got tension in the king side, and we've got moves like f4, g takes h5 coming in. Leela won a wonderful game here, and Komodo just couldn't resist there. So this is quite similar to what Stockfish has done in this position, only there are some differences that make it just a little bit more, well, gives you a few more mental hurdles to overcome. I mean, first of all, I've given up the two bishops. I've given up my dark squared bishop for the knight. And, well, this has two effects, actually. I mean, first of all, the only break you've got left in the position is f4, and that's much harder to achieve if you haven't got your dark squared bishop protecting the f4 square. And there's also the a5 pawn. I mean, with the dark squared bishop, I could line up with queen and bishop. Here I could only attack it with the queen. So the a5 pawn can simply be defended by a major piece. I mean, that's annoying for black, but it can just be defended like that. And there's no way of increasing the pressure. So, yeah, and I mean, also in the Leela Komodo game, you know, the kingside situation was still, you know, not particularly fixed. So there was, you know, plenty of fluidity in there. Whereas here it's quite fixed. So, you know, you could easily think, or, you know, the worry that you have as a human player is, okay, this looks good, but do I really have anything in the long term? Or am I just setting myself up for a static position that looks great, but that can't be won? You know, from that point of view, in the modern game, in modern players like me, you know, flexibility, keeping all your options open, all your pawn breaks open, that often, you know, is more important for you practically in a game than a continuation like this, which is static, but yeah, who knows whether it's enough to win. However, you know, Stockfish was at 1.79, and you know, basically you just saw the game proceeding, and Stockfish's evaluation is going up and up without really understanding what black is doing wrong. And, you know, I played, well, about 25, 26 engine games between Stockfish and Komodo Dragon, and White won nearly every single one from here. So, yeah, you know, probably this is just a win for White long term. What can White do here, in actual fact? Well, there's one really important idea here, and that's simply targeting this bishop on f5. And we can do that in several ways. I mean, we can play the bishop to d3 and go knight g3, get rid of that bishop, and have some attack on the g6 pawn, and maybe try and play f4 later. We've got some ideas also of swapping off the light square bishops, playing knight f6 later. We'll see one of those ideas. Swap off the knight for the dark squared bishop and then try and break. And there's the fine plan that that Stockfish played in the game, which is better than anything I've mentioned, and really shows a lot of vision. I'm going to keep it a secret until it happens. So let's have a look how that went. So Queen b8 was played, Bishop d3, Queen b6. The one thing I did wonder, actually, and this was something that Stockfish also tried in some of my games, was, well, this bishop is actually going to get targeted eventually. So I did wonder about bringing the bishop back round d7 to e8 to cover the g6 pawn from e8 and just, yeah, you know, try and hold like this. Actually, that seemed like something of a better plan. Komodo just seemed to stay still there. Queen b6, king b2, king a3. We get a little bit of shuffling here. The king's been put out of the way so that if ever White does play f4, yeah, better to have the king safe on the queen side behind a knight on b5 than on the king side. So we get a lot of little shuffling here. That's just something you have to get used to with engine games. And yeah, you know, it's one of those things that we've noticed before. You know, the contours of the position haven't changed at all, but Stockfish's evaluation is getting higher and higher, and actually so is Komodo's as well. You know, and I don't know whether it's you know, getting closer to the 50 move rule, or and that's stimulating you to find new ideas, or simply somehow some depth happening. You know, but well, you know, this is the sort of position with that evaluation steadily rising, where at some stage you see an explosion from Stockfish. So rook f8 was played. Knight f8 was another idea. You know, just keeping the knight to defend the pawn on g6 there. And well, here we see the idea that we see later in the game. Knight bc3, quite surprising. You know, after all that knight on b5, that was your crown jewel, wasn't it? But you know, that knight isn't really necessary to defend White against b-file threats. For the moment, Black's got very little, so just the queen defending the pawn on b3 is fine. And this knight can be brought around to g3 to hit that bishop on f5. And when it retreats, we come in with knight f6. And we're just threatening f4 now. Well, with a knight on f6, blocking that bishop on g7, playing f4, opening up e takes f4 is not going to be dangerous. And we've got, of course, threats. Bishop g6, knight h5. So Black took on here. This was a game Dragon against Stockfish, one of my engine matches. Rook fg2, rook ef7, and knight h5, which is very nice, because after takes, then we've got rook g8, checkmate. And, well, the breakthroughs were about to start. After takes, we went knight g3, knight f1, and then h5, rook h5, bishop g6. And this was pretty painful, I can tell you. So, yeah, I mean, that's one typical idea there. But this knight f6 idea, just threatening f4 afterwards, blocking in the dark squared bishop, making sure there's no counterplay, that's a very common idea. So rook f8 played, queen, bishop c2, rook ff7, and now knight bc3. Now Stockfish brings the knight round, queen b4, no point in exchanging off queens, and knight g3, attacking this bishop on f5. So again, if you go bishop d7, I go knight f6, and then f4, takes, and well, you know, we're just eventually going to break through there. Actually, what Dragon did against Stockfish was just line up the queen and this bishop against the pawn on g6, and then just take it, and that was good enough. So in the game, Komodo dragon took on e4. And obviously this is very, very ugly. You know, that was that bishop on f5. That was your barrier along this diagonal against this pawn. And now I can line up. And it's actually, there's a rather sad thing about this, which we'll see later. But for the moment, Stockfish does absolutely nothing, just plays around as if there's no rush in the world. There we are, la 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 la. And here Komodo played queen c8, which was rather strange in actual fact. You know, just almost giving a pawn away in disgust, you might say. But the problem is that if you go king g8, I simply go queen d3 here, and I'm lining up on this g6 pawn. And if you go king h7, I just go knight g3, and there's absolutely no way that you can stop me playing knight takes h5 and then moving the knight back and then playing h5. It's just not possible for black to defend this g6 pawn. So yeah, I mean, it's just horrific basically. What could you say? So so that's why black plays queen c8. I mean, you give away the a pawn. It doesn't really help. I mean, because white can take the a pawn and then come back and hit the g6 pawn. But yeah, what can you say? It's just a lost position. This was a very nice moment now because you know, there's many ways for white to win, but Stockfish takes really the Petrosyan approach. I mean, I could really completely imagine Tigran Petrosyan, the great Armenian world champion of the 1960s, you know, one of the finest strategical players that's ever lived, playing this plan with white in this position. And what Stockfish does, well, Stockfish is just intending to start advancing pawns on the queen side. Certainly a5 and probably b4 will happen as well. Why are you going to play those sort of breaks on the queen side? Well, if you play something like f4, then after e takes f4, this bishop gets active. If you play b4, nothing gets active. So so to that end, well, you know, if you're going to advance your queenside pawns, well, you just want to have your king safe, don't you? And you know, Stockfish's evaluation goes up to +8 or +9 at this point. Really beautiful. And you know, I mean, it just really shows. I mean, this sort of strategy is actually you know, I think this is really advanced human strategy, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of players would be amazed that you know, engines find an idea like this as easily as this. But you know, it's not even just the top engines like Komodo and Stockfish and Leela who play plans like this. We also saw this. I've got a video of it actually on the channel. We see Weiss actually playing this, you know, and yeah, again, not the strongest engine there either. So yeah, you know, this super advanced strategy has just become commonplace for the engines. Here Komodo sort of started committing suicide. It sort of gave up a little bit really, and this was just a trivial win for white. It didn't take very long for this to collapse for black. But yeah, I mean, really fantastic play. I mean, do remember this idea in King's Indian positions. I think it would absolutely shock your opponents, this idea of bishop c5 and then a4. And yeah, I mean, just remember the themes, and then, you know, in your own games, you know, you can try and reason a little bit more. Okay, I've got this possibility. Could this also be good in this position? And yeah, you know, we've seen this in Leela Komodo a while back, and now we've seen it probably an even more sophisticated version here in Stockfish Komodo. Really amazing strategy. It gave me a great deal of pleasure, you know, seeing this and yeah, you know, gradually piecing things together. You know, thinking of all the knowledge that I had and thinking, yeah, that's how it all works together. Who knows? Hopefully play it sometime in one of my own games. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks very much for watching. Why not give a like or subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it? Take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, in which that game, Leela Komodo, is analysed in a great deal of detail in the section on entrenched pieces. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.